Alright, so in this video we're taking a look at the RadioMaster TX12 OpenTX radio. This is very, very similar to a radio I reviewed a while back, the Jumper T12 Pro, as you can see here. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities between these different manufacturers that started with Jumper and then RadioMaster. I think there's Radio King as well. And I don't know if all the internals are the same, but you can see obviously there's some differences here between the models on the outside. So the original Jumper T12, which I did several videos on, it was like a T12, T12 Plus, and then the T12 Pro. They have, there's a progression of changes that occurred with each model. And I think the TX12 here is kind of the evolution of those changes. And one of the things that was kind of annoying about the Jumper series on the smaller radio here was this button layout on the right, which made it kind of a little bit unintuitive how to get around the menus. But now RadioMaster is obviously using the scroll wheel here. It's actually the same metal scroll wheel that's on the TX16S. So it's a pretty nice upgrade, and they're using I think a very similar button layout here with the back button, page forward, page back, telemetry buttons here, system button, and model button over here. So I think in terms of the buttons, in terms of the menus and the systems and everything, system settings, all that are a little bit more intuitive on the TX12 over the Jumper T12. And yes, I'll actually link some of these old videos from the old Jumper series because I did a whole bunch of them already. So I'm not going to go into every little detail, just going to kind of show you some of the differences here. And also, I would encourage you to watch the TX16S video as well. One of the things that obviously has changed in the newer version here is that they've progressively gone to higher versions of OpenTX. I think this is on the latest version 2.3.11, I believe. I mean, I haven't kept up on my updates on the T12 here because I think after I went to the Tango 2, the last firmware version I think is on here is like 2.3.7, I believe. So a few more differences here. Obviously the power button's a little bit different. We have a USB-C for charging here up on top, and then the same trainer port here. So on the T12 you have the trainer port, and then you have mini USB for charging. Although on my T12 here, which was an early unit, the charge circuit wasn't working. It does work on the TX12 here, and when you plug in USB-C here, the light turns red when it's charging, and they do include a USB-C cable in the package, and there's a little cover here for the antenna, and the antenna does come off if you want to not use the antenna, although if you're powering up the internal module on here, as this says here, please install the antenna before you power on the radio. That will eventually fry the transmitting circuit on the internal module if you don't have the antenna on here. And the other really big difference between this newer model and the older, or I guess the previous Jumper T12 Pro here, which has the internal multi-protocol module, that has the 4-in-1 chip on this one here, but the internal module on the TX12 only has the CC2500 chip, which is going to cover things like FrSky, I think FHSS, like a photography protocol, Red Pine, a few other things. I'll show you that here in a second in the menu. So I think they did that for cost because the T12 is like around $100 and the TX12 is around $70. So, if you're going for a little more budget and you don't need some of those other protocols like the ones that are related to FlySky, Spectrum, and some of the toy protocols, then you probably want to get the TX12 instead of the T12 Pro because it has just the one chip, which is going to be FrSky, and you can always, of course, use the external module for whatever you want here. It does have the folding handle. That's another thing that's different. But you have the module bay, which you can use for Crossfire, Ghost. Actually, you can use that an external 4-in-1 multi-protocol module if you want. If you do want to use those other protocols, you can add that here as well. And then let's see, the sliders here are in the same kind of location. You can see they're a little bit different in terms of the actual what the slider looks like. It's more of it's updated in terms of what the slider looks like, but the way it works feels about the same. The 3 position switches here, there are in this left and right are replaced by momentary buttons. So if you are into momentary switches, then this has that, and the T12 Pro does not have that. You have 3 position switches here. These are 2 position switches on the T12 Pro, and then these are 3 position switches here. So slightly different layout on the switches. I believe the gimbals here are just regular potentiometer gimbals. Again, for cost cutting savings, I think the T12 Pro here had the Hall sensor gimbal. Although, you know, honestly, they feel the same to me. And actually, my gimbals on my T12 Pro have a little bit of a creak in them. I think it's in the springs. So, you know, in terms of the functionality, you know, the centering, all that, and jitter, it's, you know, going to be better on the Hall sensor gimbals. The potentiometer gimbals tend to wear out faster, but if you're on a budget, that's where you're going to save some money. And, you know, maybe if you're just going to be using it for a year or two and you're going to upgrade later, then, you know, saving the money now and then saving up for something a little more expensive and nicer later may be your strategy in terms of, you know, starting out. So this is, you know, again, a budget radio kind of targeted towards people that are just starting out and maybe not wanting to spend premium money if they may not stick around in the hobby for too long. So just like the T12 Pro, the bottom here has the same battery bay. You plug in a 2S battery here and it will charge. If you want to use the included lithium-ion cell adapters, an 18650 cell adapter, you can use that. And just use the same 2S balance lead. And again, there is a charging circuit in here, and then there's the same micro SD card slot. Although you don't include a micro SD card with this particular radio, you have to get that separately. And let's go ahead and power this on to show you quickly what's in here. So again, this is an OpenTX radio, so we can go into the system menu here and use the page button to get around, and it has all the same familiar menus and functions. And you can see here we're on 2.3.11, a special RadioMaster build, dated October 27th of 2020. And then under firmware options, you can see here this particular firmware is compiled for Crossfire Ghost internal multi-protocol module, external protocol module, and Lewis C. Let's go back. It's everything in the system menu, and then in the model menu here, they have a few built-in models here. Of course, you can go into here and edit the model settings, and we'll go to here. So it's so under internal RF module here, you can see it says multi, and then under type, there's a limited number because it's only with a 1 chip, not a 4-in-1 chip. So what we have here are, let's just go all the way back. We have Corona, FrSky RX, FrSky X2, so there's various different FrSky versions, FrSky L, High Tech, HOTT, RadioLink, that's a new one, and Redpine, I think that's, and SFHSS, that's a Futaba based protocol. So there's a few more here as well. So yeah, this has only the ones that are related to the CC2500 chip, and the version on here, the firmware version on here is 1.3.1.69. So in terms of the build quality here, it's very basic. I mean, nothing really in terms of like the build, nothing really stands out as bad. It doesn't creak or anything. It feels solid. Just that the plastic does feel a little bit on the budget side, kind of, you know, definitely they're looking to save cost here. It's not like a premium feeling plastic. It feels very, you know, very basic. It doesn't feel terrible, but obviously you can tell that this is a low cost radio. Obviously they didn't spend the money on like this kind of watermarking here, this sort of faux carbon fiber look on the T12 Pro. I think I guess that's where you're cutting some cost. And by the way, these little accessories here, if you saw this previous videos, these don't come with the T12 Pro. This the gimbal stick ends, and then these little switch covers are not included in the T12 Pro, but there's just things I added on. Of course, you can always do that to add those things to the TX12 if you're going to use this as your daily radio. So anyway, if you're kind of looking for a smaller radio, maybe if you have smaller hands or you just don't want to carry around a lot of weight, this is a nice option if you don't need the other protocols, the Spectrum, FlySky, and some of the toy protocols. If you're mainly going to use this for FrSky type receivers, using the CC2500 chip, and or you're going to be mainly using the module bay in the back for things like Crossfire or Ghost or something else like that, then this is not a bad option. If you are mainly looking for smaller radio and only those functions, you don't need those other ones. Otherwise, I think other radios are probably going to be better for you. And of course, for me, I've already switched to the Tango 2 because it's even smaller. This in terms of package, smaller and even lighter than this. Of course, the cost of that with the multi-protocol module and everything, and I got the Pro version with the collapsible gimbal sticks, is well over $200. And this is around the $70 price points, and with coupons it could be even as low as $60. So if you're looking for a budget option, definitely can recommend this. If you if you fit that situation where you don't need those other 3 chips in the multi-protocol module. Now, in terms of replacing the module in here, as far as I understand, the module board is soldered to the main board. So you may, if you have some soldering skills, if you want to replace the internal board, you might possibly be able to do that. But again, then you're spending extra money to put the internal module in. You might as well get something else like the T12 Pro already has the 4-in-1 module in place instead of spending, $70 for this and then $30 for an internal module and then doing all those things. Unless you want the scroll wheel, for example, and the folding handle, those kind of things are important. And maybe doing the modification on this one might be the way to go. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. Okay, a couple last things here. They did send along these new receivers. So RadioMaster does have a bunch of receivers that they do sell now that work with obviously their TX12 and TX16S radios. So this one here is kind of a bigger one. It's called the R168. It's an 8-channel receiver and it has all these pins for PWM connections you can see here. And it also does S-Bus as well. It has a S-Smart port telemetry port as well. So this is, I think, kind of like I can't remember the exact name of the receiver. It's the one that I don't use, like the XR8 receiver, I believe. These are basically clones of existing FrSky receivers, and I've heard that the firmware on those might work in these, but I'm not going to be testing them because I'm not going to be using these at all. But like this one here, the R161, again has S-Bus and the smart port telemetry port and RSSI port there, and it reminds me a lot of the RXSR receiver, but this has a plastic case here, so you can kind of see the receiver inside there, and it's enclosed inside this little case. So again, it may work with the RXSR firmware, I don't know. Of course, they have probably firmware on the RadioMaster side as well, but these are lower cost than the FrSky equivalents. I think they're less than half the price. So if you're, again, in the RadioMaster system, or if you're using FrSky receivers and you want some cheaper receivers, these might not be bad options. And I'll probably use some of these in future builds, so I'm not going to be showing them in this video, but maybe in a future video you may see these down the road. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for this one. Let me know if you have any questions about the TX12, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.